Do you constantly get stuck trying to finish your arrangements? In the next 10 minutes, I'll show you a bulletproof technique to turn your ideas into interesting arrangements without getting stuck. Hey yo, it's Alex from Mind Music. I'm a musician and certified audio engineer here to help you finish music that you're proud of. I help music artists compose, produce, and mix their own professional sounding tracks by using a repeatable, creative process. In every single video, my goal is that you're going to walk away with some actionable advice that you can immediately implement to help you level up as a music creator. So as I've said, in the next 10 minutes, I'll show you a bulletproof technique and frame of mind to turn your ideas into interesting arrangements without getting stuck. All right, so to start, let's talk about the problem that a lot of people encounter when trying to compose and arrange ideas. And it's usually because they try to do so too early in the process, okay? You don't ever want to be in a situation where you're scratching your head, staring at the DAW and asking yourself, where can this go? I don't know where to take this. That's not really a good position to be in. That's not a strong state of mind to be in, to be creative, okay? It's much easier to work with pre-developed ideas that are easily arranged, okay? And a good analogy for this is think about sculpting marble, okay? Instead of building an arrangement, think about sculpting an arrangement, okay? And what I mean by this is that instead of pressuring yourself to create a composition that checks all the boxes, that's amazing, that blows your mind, that matches the vision that you have in your head for the song, think of it as instead think of it of creating the material, creating the marble that you're going to then sculpt and refine and edit later. Okay. And the reason for this is it actually alleviates a lot of pressure of you having to create an amazing composition. And it actually gives you the condition. It creates the conditions for you to actually be creative in the composition stage. Okay. The reason is that you will be actively making decisions from something that is already structured as opposed to making decisions about the structure. Right. So it'll make more sense when I show you a little bit later in the DAW, but essentially we want to give ourselves the opportunity to stay in creative flow as opposed to scratching our heads and being like, I don't know where this song is going to go. Even if you have a structure that you don't like, it creates the conditions where you have something to make decisions about. Even if you don't like something, that's better to be there so then you can change it towards something that you prefer versus having no idea what to do whatsoever. Make sense? The next thing I want to talk about is musical storytelling. So to do that, I'm actually going to share my screen here. And I'm going to talk to you about the compose stage of this system. So in case you don't know, I teach and I use a complete system from A to Z to take your ideas from very first ideas all the way to a finished master in a streamlined process that helps you stay in flow. But more specifically, we're talking about compose today, okay? So I'm going to open this up. If you want access to this template and the checklist that we'll be going through in this video, just comment down below and I'll get it to you. But what I want to highlight is this concept called musical storytelling. So a good song emphasizes changes in dynamics through tension and release, okay? And it's exactly the same as a good story or a good narrative. Think of the hero's journey and its many chapters. And you've most likely seen this. It's like the Bible, Star Wars, Harry Potter, The Matrix, the list goes on. Almost every popular movie follows a hero's journey. And the thing to highlight there is that the chapters in a hero's journey are very specific modes of tension and release, right? It's like, okay, everything's all good, and then something happens, and then things aren't so good anymore. So that's a bunch of tension got introduced, and then you get introduced to new characters, right? The story starts developing, and then maybe you get to another point where, hey, you realize something, or oh wow, there's a climax to the story, and it ebbs and flows as it takes you on the narrative. It's the same thing with songwriting, and the way we do it is through tension and release, but musically, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But again, a good quote that encapsulates this is, music is liquid architecture and architecture is frozen music. Okay. And it's a good way to think about it that, hey, you want to be creating the structure for somebody to experience the emotions that your musical ideas, the dynamics brings to the journey. Okay. And again, we want to be crafting tension and release here. Okay. We really want to think about how can we take people on a journey from beginning, middle to end where they feel moved. Because if you can move somebody with your music, chances are that they're going to be impacted by it and remember it, right? So again, I would say composition is arguably the most important stage of this entire system and the entire process of being a music producer. Okay. It's not about fancy sound design, fancy mixing techniques, knowing your plugins, and it's not about necessarily just one-off ideas, right? It's about songs. It's about telling a story and impacting people with the music. And it all comes from the composition stage. Okay. And again, getting a really good composition together is the key to make editing, mixing, and mastering later in the process much easier because you're working with something that's already very good versus trying to make it good in editing, mixing, and mastering, which is always very difficult to do, if not impossible. Okay, so again, the primary goal is to try to evoke a response in the listener. Okay, so you want to frame every decision you make as how can I make this impact the listener and create a moving experience? And you can do this by contrasting tension and release, using tension and release and using storytelling by contrasting opposites, right? Like loud and soft, sparse or full, close and far, bright, dark, all these kind of opposites that you can contrast to create more tension and release, right? And there's a zillion other ways we can do it. We'll talk about that a bit more in a sec. And again, we want to leverage those opposites to evoke a response in the listener. And we want to start thinking big brush strokes when you're making a composition, again, to create the marble for you to chisel away at and sculpt and refine more later. Okay. So how I would suggest that you approach this is that you set a timer and then you map out the general song structure, and I'll give you a framework for that in just a sec. And then you just compose your song so then you have something to work with instead of having a loop or just a bunch of unconnected ideas. Okay. And this helps you solve uninteresting song arrangements. Okay. Which is so important to get good right off the beginning. Lack of a cohesive structure that presents your ideas in a clear way, and overcomplicated production mixing process. If you can nail this down, then the rest becomes easier. Okay. So I want to show you another thing that I've designed here. And I think it's super useful to help frame your thinking in terms of a composition. Okay, so I call this the sine wave song structure, and let me present this. And basically, it's to help you frame your thinking in terms of tension and release. Okay, so again, you don't have to follow this structure. You can look at a zillion different song structures, but they all have a sort of ebb and flow of peaks and valleys of energy. Okay, so if we look at this example, right, you could have maybe 4 sections in your song, and you can see that we have this peak, which is the sun up here, and this peak over here, which is the moon. And these are kind of the energetic climaxes of your track. Okay, this is where everything is building up towards, or a point of excitement or release that happens where it's like, oh, a conclusion has happened, right? So something to consider. And then energy tends to flow towards and or away from these peaks, right? So you're going to build up to a peak or drop or chorus, right? And then you're going to dissipate and change and go in a different direction. And you'll often come back to another peak later in the song. Okay. And again, you can create this by leveraging the contrasting of opposites like loud and soft, dense and sparse, close and far, bright and dark, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And one thing that's useful about this is to really frame your thinking in arranging your parts in terms of like, how are they contributing to this overall shaping of energy? Okay. The tension and release. And I think that that's the most important frame to have when you're doing a rough composition. So in this example, stages like 1, 4, 7, and 10, which are at the beginning of a 3-part chunk, beginning of a quarter, beginning of a session, can be things such as intros, drops, switch ups, or main idea. And it's very entering, it's leading, it's primary. It's like, hey, we're going somewhere new. Something's leading your ear to go somewhere, right? And then stages 2, 5, 8, and 11, which are in the middle of those sections, can be harmonic and rhythmic development based upon what's already been established. Okay, so here it's more continuing, progressing, developing, right? Adding new characters into the same mix of the context that you're in. Okay, and then from there, 3, 6, 9, and 12, which is the end of all of these sections, could be things such as build-ups. It could be breakdowns, transitions, outro, and this is a lot more of transforming, dissolving, creating tension to then release it at these peaks. right? Okay, so I just wanted to share this with you to frame your thinking. And again, this is just one song structure, but it's the importance is to think about how your sections are contributing to the overall experience of your track, okay? And then you can use this and you can apply it to your own song. You can change it. You can analyze other song structures and use the same kind of framework to see, okay, well, where's the energy going throughout this track? Okay. If you want this, again, comment down below. It's part of the template here. And I'm going to jump over to Ableton and I have this really rough composition that I'm going to skim over very quickly to just show you what I mean by this tension and release. Okay. So if we start this off, I introduced this track just with a beat. So we get into the groove. Super simple. Okay, nothing complicated there. But again, I am leading the direction. It's like, okay, now we're in this certain BPM. There's a certain groove. There's a pattern going on. Okay, and then the next section, we're starting to develop on this. So I'm introducing new ideas that work really well with that first groove. Okay, nothing crazy. And the bass is starting to introduce harmonic information. So we're in this kind of like harmonic minor vibe, you know, little Eastern vibe going on. So we're getting a little bit of development that's being built upon the existing groove, right? Then from here, right, we're really trying to build, I'm trying to build tension up to a point, right? I'm trying to like create energy so that we can release that energy and go into the next section, right? So let's listen here. So I bring in a new melody, I bring in those chords in the back, right? And we're starting to go somewhere. And then from here, I kind of wanted to create a sense of resolve, right? It's like, okay, we're building up, there's this new melody, this new stuff coming in, right? And now let's go back to a little bit more chill. Okay, so notice how there's some newness here, right? If we reference this shape again, let's go over here. Like so far in the beginning, we started an idea, we developed some idea, we got some more harmonic information, we're building, we're developing, and now we've like introduced a lot of elements and we're kind of building up to a point of climax, right? It's like, oh, it's happening now. We got a lot of the information of what the song's all about. And then here, still keeping the same drum groove, but now we're changing up the bass a little bit and we're introducing a new element, right? So starting to lead the ear again somewhere else, so on and so forth. I'm not going to go through this entire track, but you can get the idea where, hey, if you pay attention to this, you can start to create a captivating song, right? If I go over here, we have this like descent. So again, I'm kind of creating tension by dissolving the groove. So we'll go here. Bring down the energy, right? Right? Then we're starting to build in a new direction. Okay, so, and again, this isn't perfect. This is very basic in terms of a structure. But again, all I'm doing is creating the marble that I'm going to then sculpt and refine and add new layers and remove stuff and change it around. There's nothing finalized here. But then I have something to make decisions about, right? Versus scratching my head and being like, where's this song going to go? I don't really know. Okay, so that's essentially what I've got for you today. I've used this method so many times in many different ways to help me go just from these scattered ideas and sketch them out into a shape that delivers an experience. And then from there, go into the second half of composing it to really deck it out. If it's a song that's worth developing, of course, and then editing, mixing and mastering, so on. So if you want the checklist for this stage and all the accompanying template and all that stuff, just comment down